So I don't really have like a format. Like the idea behind the Nowhere Project, which is what I've started, is an on-location kind of video podcast.
Oh, okay.
So as far as like podcasting, Dave's actually, we're working together. He's going to be my host, so he's normally going to do any kind of podcasting interviews. Because I'm that guy behind the camera, not this guy.
Oh, okay.
So I don't really have a format. I just want to get to know you. You seem cool. You're talking. Before we get too far into like the why is what is Two Native Sons exactly? I know it's a podcast, but it's you and Patrick?
Yeah, Patrick Murakami, and actually, so we will probably be doing an announcement with a nationally known photographer, Mandy Penn. She's actually here in Colorado Springs. She had a viral photo shoot go viral, and she had done a baby shoot, and you can go look on her Facebook page, Mandy Penn Photography, but that cover photo that she has is 6 babies that are all with the characters of Friends.
Oh,
and
nice.
so that went viral.
Nice.
But with Two Native Sons, it's unique because I've known Patrick. We've known each other a little over a year now. I think this December will be 2 years. But we had met last September, and before we had talked, I was going through a exercise, and the exercise comes from the book The Buddha and the Badass by Vishen Lakhiani. And one of the things is 3 most important questions. And so I was saying, what experiences do you want to have in life? And so I wrote down writer. And then 2 hours later, met up with Patrick at a park, and he's like, hey, have you ever thought about writing a book? I was like, it's funny because you're like the 4th or 5th person that's asked me this. So I was like, all right, whatever, here we go. And so we're writing the book, we're almost done with it, but we tell people the way we're doing things, it's very unscripted, it's very off the cuff. We're looking at the book, really, we have the chapter, and then he's talking, I'm talking, so it's like a movie script. So we're like, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. If there's stuff that's out there, it's nothing that I've came across. Yeah. And Patrick's like, I've never thought about that. So, but with Two Native Sons, it's a social impact business. We're very driven on helping to highlight and showcase small businesses. And it's really going out there and getting the small businesses in the audience's light, let them actually share their story, and we come and do live streams with them, so we help them to overcome that, so they're not having to do it. We go and do it, and then when we stream, we'll stream to multiple platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Patrick's got that figured out. We also go through Twitch. So if you know about the Twitch community, started as a gaming community, and that's how Patrick kind of built his following on that side. And so now we're trying to bridge that gap from real life to the unorthodox audience that you may not ever tap into.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how Two Native Sons came into play, and we're both really big with just the dreaming big entrepreneurial mindset, and we're both from Colorado, so that's kind of how the Native piece came in. Yeah, so it's very funny, but several different routes, different options and whatnot. And the thing that we do also is for businesses, through Jasper with Tabala's Creative Cuisine, which is a food truck. They're getting ready to roll, start going back out next week. But she does Tabala Food for Thought, so she does a quick business blast. But the thing is, it's not, hey, who are you, what's your business? It's, hey, who are you and what's your story?
Yeah.
So we can really showcase. And so with Jasper coming on, we also do a weekly roundtable called the Dreamer Cypher every Wednesday. And we have people just come on, have open discussions. We don't tell people this is what we're going to talk about, this is what you can't talk about. Yeah. Whatever you want to say. It's an open conversation, because Patrick and I are like, these are the conversations people are already having. So let's bring them to the forefront. And then by allowing people to come on and be true to themselves and not have anything held back, it allows them to be more open and fluid. So it's one of those things, because at one point we had started the live stream a couple months ago, and I was moving stuff around, and I guess this is the thing because I want to drop it, but I said F, and it was a full word and whatnot. But that's the type of thing that what we do is just having that real human dialect. Yeah. And I laugh because I bring up, and there's people in the local community that are real big and they'll do business blasts, but it's like, hey, who are you? What's your business? And then I'm listening and I'm like, this is the same thing that I've heard from 10 other people.
Yeah.
Leverage their stage, leverage the audience that they've created, and show people who you are.
Yeah.
Let them know your story. Let them know your heart, because that's going to separate you. Because business can be imitated. That's the funny thing. Any business can be imitated, but what's going to separate you from everybody else is your story that's been ingrained into whatever that is.
That's all you're really selling anymore is the experience of working with you, not necessarily what you're doing. Like, I'm a wedding photographer. There's 10,000 in Colorado. So it's like the only difference between those 10,000, I mean, there's some quality of work differences, but barely, is the experience of working with me and how easy, simple, stress-free, if I can make it, that's what it is. So that's super important. And they're picking people based on the person at this point, because there's so many. They're all the same, prices are similar, so maybe they'll go with that guy because he likes puppies, or whatever they heard on this podcast or that, you know. So it's telling the story, that getting to know the person, I think, is important.
Yeah, and I look, because the first podcast that I had launched it back in March, and the funny thing is, it's like when everything started ramping up with COVID and all that fun stuff. A month before that, I'd run in and talked to a good friend of mine, and he's like, why don't you look at doing a meetup group for divorced gentlemen, but also see if you can find a woman that's gone through divorce. And so after we had talked, a month after that, I ran into a good friend of mine. She's an insurance agent, which is unique because somebody's like, you know a lot of insurance people. I was like, I don't know. But the individual that was the co-host with me for a while on the podcast is Marion Wilson. And we went and just talked about our journey, and we were talking about creating a meetup group and coming together twice a month. But because of COVID, we were like, what else can we do? And so I was like, let's just do a podcast. But the funny thing though is, launched the podcast, and a week before it launched, I was talking to my mom. I was like, I don't think anybody's gonna want to listen to it. So it's the creative piece. It's like, nobody's gonna want to listen to this. My life is not that infatuation with people and whatnot, and so we did it, and it's something that I truly enjoy. And then ended up launching another podcast, the High School and Beyond podcast, which I do holistic career and college planning. So I do quite a bit, but it falls under the umbrella of coaching, because that's something else that I've gotten into also. And so launched the High School and Beyond podcast, is talking about my experience with what I've learned through the company. And then had David on last night as a guest on there, which was a great episode. Enjoyed it. But like we were talking, David's got that energy that is very infectious. Yeah. And so grateful that he gave that time and he jumped on. And just to see his perspective when it comes to the education system, because that's something that truly does need to change. I was watching a YouTube video, and I think it was about 5 years ago this guy had done it, and he's like, you know what, we still have people that are lining up, and the foreman, scratch that, the teacher is directing them and all that. And so it's one of those things that things have to change, but it's one of those challenging things, is how can we make the change? And the only way we can do that is by coming together and just being ourselves, and then start coming together with other people that have that same vision, that same dream, and just start building a big net, build a big vehicle. And I tell people, I'm like, if you have a dream, have it large enough that that vehicle is large enough people can jump in there with you and go after that dream, but you can turn around and help that other person go after their dreams, whatever it is. So it's unique, because you get some people that are so drawn on what can this person do for me. It's like, no, what can you do for that other person? How can you help them out? What can you do and whatnot? So it's a unique thing, that's for sure. Yeah.
My whole philosophy on any business I run is provide value before money takes place. Before anything, you provide a value, and the money will come. Like, you'll become that top guy. If you're providing the most value, you're gonna win at the end. Like, it's true. Like Dave says, it's chess versus checkers, playing the long game versus the short game. You know, I'm broke now. 10 years, I'm not going to be broke.
Yeah, very, very true. And I think it's just that outlook and whatnot. And I know when we had met through the COS networking group, you had discussed the fact that you're starting your journey with the one-on-one piece. You really haven't had to deal with that before.
I still don't understand networking. Like, I see the same people. I've been to 2 or 3, and I see the same people in all of them. And they do 30 seconds in each of them about their business to the same people. and it's not recorded. And I'm like, I don't understand.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things that you really have to look. It's kind of that change of projection and change of perspective is, okay, who can I partner with? Who really resonates? Who do we have that same similar vision and whatnot? Because yesterday, when the group had met, people already know. So I'm like, okay, cool. Scott Brandt, one half of Two Native Sons. Got a couple questions here to ask you. So one of the things I had brought up, I was like, how are you showing up on social media? How are you showing up as an individual to really let people know who you are? So that transparency piece, the vulnerability piece. But then the other question I asked him, I was like, when you guys give a recommendation on Facebook, what is it? Is it really selling and saying this is why this person needs to go talk to this individual? Or are you just putting out a name and then saying this is who you need to go see, but there's nothing behind it? And so I have to laugh because Facebook, all these referrals or references and whatnot, it's like, hey, go see this person, and that's it. I'm like, that's like the dang yellow pages for social media. And then the other thing that I laugh at is like with the insurance, because people don't understand your insurance is different for everybody because it's not cut and dry of, yeah, I understand you saved $1,000, but that's you. Somebody's gonna go talk to this person and maybe only saves $500, and then they're mad at you because they're like, oh, you said they could say, no, it's like, I understand people are looking to save money, but the bad thing that runs in with that, though, is a lot of people are like, how can I reduce this bill, this expenses? Insurance is one that if you never use it, it's an intangible product. But once you use it, do you have something that's going to save you and keep you safe? Yeah. Patrick is a local insurance agent, so he'll actually, you can go sit down and talk to him. So it's not these 800 numbers calling in and then you're on hold for an hour and a half and you're like, oh my goodness, I forgot what I was calling in for. But that's the thing too, like with a broker, they can shop around for you and look at different agencies, different providers, and see if there's something that's better suited for you price wise. But you got people that are like, I'm going to call this 1-800 number because that's who my grandparents had 20,000 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's for my business insurance. That's what I did. I just searched who to get. Yeah. Found one that was online, got it. I don't know what, I never price shopped. I don't know if hopefully it's good. Yeah. Insurance is one of those, for me, it's one of those things like, I don't want to ever use it. Nobody ever wants to use it. I just hope when I do need to use it that they're a good company, but I don't want to like investigate if they are or not.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that it's like coaching. I tell people when you're working with a coach, that for the coach is very intangible. So you don't know what's going on. And until you hear someone speak and like, man, this really helped me out, like then you're like, oh, okay, I am making a difference. But until you hear something that's like, I don't know, it's an intangible thing. You can't see it. This is that person that's working on themselves and having to do the change if they need to. So
yeah. It's like the 20-year-old life coach.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the program I went through, the youngest that they've had actually was 19 years old.
Really?
Yep. And the interesting thing is like a really great coach will ask questions. That's all it is really. Because as an individual, we're
like therapy.
Yeah. Well,
pulling information out of you and reading it the right way.
Yeah. So that's the unique thing because therapy more is the therapist is directing you and saying this is what you need to do. So it's more of getting you from rock bottom to baseline and whatever baseline is for you. Yeah. A coach is more working with you going from baseline to thriving in whatever part you need to thrive in. Yeah. So it's asking questions that really get you to think differently, look at it differently. Maybe you haven't looked at it this way. And so having that coach ask that question, because we're all experts in our own life. The biggest thing that people have to understand is this is your hero's journey. You got to go walk this journey by yourself, and that other person's there to be a support for you, but they can't go fight your battles for you. You've got to go do it. And so coaching, it's unique because everybody looks at the world differently, and as humans, we may get so overwhelmed because we take in so much information, and so that coach can help you kind of simulate it and draw out, but you make those final determinations and whatnot. So it's like coaches shouldn't be directing your homework for you. You should really be directing your homework that's going to be best suited for you. Yeah. Because if a coach is giving you recommendations and it doesn't work out and you fall, you're going to get mad at them and you're like, this is what you told me to do, and then it didn't work, so like I hate you. And it's like, well, that was your choice. I didn't tell you to do it. So
yeah, well, that's true. That's something I've never had. I had one mentor walking into photography, And then he turns out he was submitting my photos under his name for contests and winning those contests. I was like, I think I'm done with this path. I'm going to do my own thing from now on. So I've never had a coach, a mentor, or anything. So I don't understand. I know there's got to be a benefit to it because it's a big market, but I've never.
And that can be, that's the thing, like you're having that experience can really jade the situation.
It's like turn me off of the whole
thing. And then what happens is you may come across somebody that could be a potential great resource for you, but you're like, man, this has happened this last time. Yep. So if you start bleeding it in, you potentially miss out. Yeah. But that's the thing, as humans, it's all each our own experience, and we kind of figure out what's best for us and go with that and just do being a human, whatever it is.
I guess I kind of look at David as a mentor of sorts, or a partner. We're kind of partnering with this whole podcast thing and Epoch 365 and starting what's essentially a media company, but not quite that large.
Oh, okay.
It's a small scale media company, kind of designed for making social content and media accessible and affordable for small businesses. So I look at him kind of like a mentor just because he's super energetic, super motivated, executes well.
Which is unique because how old are you?
I'm 44. Yeah, he's younger than me.
Yeah, he's 29. Yeah. And so that was something that we had talked about last night on the episode when we did the recording and whatnot. And he's like, I'm 29 years old and I feel like I'm much further along than a lot of 40-year-olds. And it's so funny.
He's probably talking about me.
I don't know. He didn't specify. But that's unique when you bring that up. You're like, I look at David as a mentor. And so that's the thing. David's younger than you. And so like you brought up that 19-year-old life coach.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
It depends on the path. Because like I worked Pepsi for 17 years. So I was in that 9 to 5. This is, you build your 401k and this is how life works. And then 36, I was introduced to starting a company. Ran with that, started another one after that. And now I'm on my third, going on fourth iteration of that company. So,
oh, okay.
So for the past 8 years is all I've thought outside of corporate world.
Oh, okay.
Like it's always been corporate world before that. Like this is how life works, and that's what I was taught by my father. Like you save up, you save money, you pay your house off, you pay your car off, and then you're good. Never like outside of that.
Yeah.
And then I was introduced to that world, so I'm behind on that scale.
So when you look at that, because you've made that jump from the 9 to 5 corporate structure to now where you're at now. How has that transition been for you with going from that structured piece to now it's like, oh, I'm wide open in the ocean here. Which way do I go?
No, I love it. Like I fell into it and that's what I was supposed to do. Like I love it. And now I kind of look back at corporate world and I look back at people with like salaries and I'm like, that's your cap. They're telling you the highest potential you can make. It's not based on whether you work the hardest in that company or the least in that company. That's what you make. And I look at my own stuff, I'm like, I don't have a cap. If I want to make more money, I just go do more things. Yep. And that's awesome. Yep. Or if I don't want to work that hard, this is around what I'm going to make. So either way, it goes either way.
Yep. And I think the unique thing, and this is something that I brought up because Patrick, him and his family ended up dealing with COVID. It was pretty bad for 3 weeks. And so I had talked, I was like, man, if Patrick and I weren't business partners and we were trying to do this ourselves, and Patrick got back on the train of trying to rebuild this, like 3 weeks behind can be very stressful. Yeah. And so I tell people, I'm like, if you're going to start a business or get into business, find somebody you truly trust and you can lean on, because if you fall in a rut and you're by yourself, good luck trying to get out of that rut, because it's you by yourself. But having that business partner or having the partnership of a couple people and coming together and really working together helps out, because we're not always going to be able to overcome things. We have to work as a team. And it's unique because I think it's an African proverb, and I really bring this up too, is you can go fast by yourself, but you can go far together.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, you can go fast, but you're also limited by your experiences, by your lens.
Yep.
You can go very far because you're using your experience, you're partnering with somebody else with their experience, you're coming together and creating a major battery pretty much, and going out there and doing some massive, major things.
Yep.
And so when you guys look at the media company, creating that for small businesses, I don't know if I'm getting into stuff here that you guys haven't talked about. You're like, we're not letting it go yet. But have you thought any in regards to the branding, the name of what you guys are trying to create?
The company is called Epoch 365.
Okay.
EPOCH 365.
Have you talked in regards to kind of the vision of what you have for that company? Because like for myself and Patrick with Two Native Sons, and so shout out to Mandy Penn with the photography, with her jumping on, Jasper with her energy, even though she's like, she doesn't believe it, she doesn't give herself enough credit, and we always tell her you need to give yourself more credit. And then we also have a gentleman, Mike Marquez, and it's unique how we've come together, coming across and whatnot. But we've told people our vision with Two Native Sons, and we've got a deadline of 15 years, so it's our 15-year anniversary, which would be for September 2039, is to be $1 billion enterprise, and then to have impacted 1 billion people. And so people are like, that's a lot of number. That's I'm like, yeah, it's not that large when you really think about it. 1 billion is not that much. But the thing is, like, we talk about the monetary goal, because having a big vision, you have to have money, because money legitimately is the only way to help enhance that. And it's funny when you talk to people, it's like two camps. Some people will run away, freak out, start cussing you out, like money's bad. It's like, no, like, money's just vehicle, money's just an energy. And so if you've got
necessity,
if you've got this big goal and this big dream, like to impact 1 billion people, that's going to take a lot of money, because we do have different things underneath the umbrella. Like Patrick's broken it down, he's like, there's 17 like different ways that we can start creating money and whatnot. So it's just growing and slowly looking at different things and whatnot. So is that something that you and David have talked about?
Yep, we've sat down and talked about. We have 7 shows on the line. 3 of them are video series shows and podcasts. Everything's going to be turned into a podcast because you have the audio, so we might as well put it there. And then there's, I think, 5 podcasts on top of that. On top of that, I built this down here for the kind of the purpose of my own podcast and what he wants to do, but also for anybody who was like where Dave was at before, where he's sitting in his closet recording a podcast, he's surrounded by his car or whatever.
Yep.
Well, I want you to have the ability to come here, just record. I'll handle distribution if you want. I'll handle editing, recording, everything you want to do, video and audio. So you just use the space for an hour a week, and then it's all taken care of. Yeah. You can go run your business, and I'll publish all that stuff for you. So that's part of it. If that grows, then there'll be a studio involved, or we can do, multiply that times 5, 10, however many studios we can fit into it. Well, then there's the wedding photography's still going. That's a piece of Epoch 365. Then there's product photography, headshots, business kind of related stuff, product promo videos, commercials, anything you can need in media, from small videos to photos to not necessarily graphic design. I'm decent at it, but not to where I would want to charge people.
I got
unless we partnered with somebody who wanted to be the graphic design piece.
Talking about that, actually, so a couple of our stuff with our logos and all that, Patrick Massey, great individual, and so I'll get you guys connected. You can sit down and talk to him and kind of see and whatnot, but he's also a small business owner. But it's unique because he did a 30-day challenge in November of photo manipulation, and some of these pictures that he had done were like 29 different pieces of different pictures brought together. I was like, oh my goodness. But what he does, because he's actually a professional basketball player too, but because of COVID and all that, he's like, I got to figure something out. So
I got all this time on my
so he plays with the Harlem Wizards, and nice. It's unique how you come across people and you start finding different things out about those individuals that you may not never know, and just to be able to help connect people. because that's the thing. I'm like, when people ask for the references and all that, I'm like, hey, go talk to these people. But caveat, go talk to 3 or 4 people to see who fits you, and you have that comfort level to build a relationship and you want to go forward. But it's like one of those things, people are like, go talk to Bob, and then that's it. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah. So I think the far end goal is to have the media company that handles everything we want to handle, and beneath that, so it's a machine that a small business can come in and just get tons of content or whatever they need for their business. If they need something we don't offer in our particular set, we have Epoch Talent, which is a kind of a talent agency, but it's really just having a group of vetted talent, whether it's copywriting, graphic design, traditional art, audio, whatever it is, where it's a talent pool we can pull from there, link them to the right business. The business hires our company, so it's one contract, one invoice through us, and then we 1099 the talent to kind of link them all together and finish their big projects.
It makes sense too, especially because like you start looking at people and it's like, let me take on everything under the sun. It's like, no, focus on your strengths, whatever you're strong in, keep pushing. If you're the visionary, keep creating these visions, bringing people together that can help formulate it. But if you suck at something or it's not your passion, do not take that on. And I think that's a lot of trouble with a lot of people when they get into business. They're like, let me do everything. And it's like, no, let's not do everything, because you're not going to be able to fine tune your strengths. Because anything that you're strong on, you want to continue to fine tune that. And then anything that you are weak in, find somebody that can complement you and have them go and run with their strengths. And it's a matter also to understand who you are. So if you like to be micromanaged, you need to also find those partners that enjoy the micromanaging. Because if you're a micromanager and you get somebody that's like, just give me a couple pieces of the idea, I'll run with it, and then you're like constantly on them, they're like, this is not going to work. And so it's interesting because it's one of the books I read. It's Captivate by Vanessa Van Wyn. And she talks about the science of human interactions and knowing those different things. And so she talks about the big 5, which she said legitimately is your go-to, which when you break it down, it's an acronym of OCEAN. So it's openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, I think agreeableness, and then neuroticism is the last one. And neuroticism, that's where you're getting into your micromanaging. So if you're high, you're a micromanager. If you got somebody that's low in there, you got to find a way to compromise. So that's the other thing, is understand who you are, so that way you can partner with people that you're not butting heads against.
Yep, that's very true. It's important to find the people that fit, because like my wife wants to be an entrepreneur or thinks about it, but at the same time she hates not having a list of to-do items in the day. So it's like she has to have a process that's already in play, and there's no like weaving in or out. She wants that straight line of this is what I'm doing today or this month, and I'm gonna get all that done. So she's one of those people that needs somebody above her to at least point her in the right direction. This is where we're going. She's like, oh, okay, cool. She'll go there. Whereas I'm like, what do we want to do today? How am I going to do whatever? I'll figure it out.
And that's because that's also like, if that's her strength, and she needs that structure too. She could potentially still become an entrepreneur. Find that business partner or the business and work together. And then she's the person that has all the structure. Because Patrick and I joke, we're like, if we didn't have people that had structure, we would just, okay, here's the idea, let's go. All right, cool. Here's another idea. Go. So it's unique, but we're grateful for just the introductions, the partnerships, the relationships, and just things that are growing and whatnot. But it's unique because I know you're like, I'm looking to network with people just to do the one-on-one, and then you're like, hey, do you want to get together, you want to do content creation? I was like, let's go do it, because you just never know. Something shared here, somebody says something, and you're like, I haven't thought about it that way, or oh, that's a different perspective. So, and I think it's funny because you'll get some people that get very hesitant about whatever it is. And I'm like, go use it to your advantage, because you just never know.
Yeah, Matthew Biera came over. We did a podcast on his business. It was fun. Had no plan, just a conversation about, that's all podcasts are, just a conversation. So it was fun. I think it's way better than a one-on-one at some Olive Garden.
It's true.
Over breadsticks.
It's true. So I do have something, because I found this through a gentleman, Travis Brown, And he has his group on Facebook, but he created this app called Poddex. Have you seen it come through Facebook or anything? So it's one of these things that it may be of interest when it comes to like a tool that you can have in your toolbox, because some of these questions, it opens up a door that normally aren't asked. And so it's funny how you get in this. And Travis Brown, who created this app, some of these questions, I was like, Travis, what are you thinking when you have created this? So I'll just pull up a couple, well, you can run through and whatnot. But so you got the mobile app, and every month he puts 2 new decks in there. Yeah. And then he's got physical decks. And so like
podcast conversation starter.
Yeah, actually, so there is a deck in here that's called episode ideas. Oh, nice. And so when you go pull this up, and there's 59 cards in this. So like one of the episode ideas is my top 5 favorite books. So you can have a conversation on that. But it's unique because of some of these questions. So like one of these decks is called How Dare You? And let me see. There we go.
It's called
Poddex. Okay. Yeah, and so this is 184 cards in this deck alone. Nice. So the funny thing, because a lot of people bring this up with the new generation, they're so open. So there's nothing that they can really get away with because they're so open. They just post it. Yeah. And then you'll hear people that experienced it before the internet came around, and they're like, man, if we had the internet, we could post what we were doing. Oh yeah, it would have been done.
There would have been so many viral videos from my childhood. Jumping off of buildings and houses and crashing cars or whatever we wanted to do.
That's funny, but it's unique, it's interesting and whatnot. And then the other thing I know, looking, it's not in the shot and whatnot, but I did take a fancy to the picture that you had up here. And you said you have an infinity with Einstein, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you look at it, because I'm looking, you do have the different formulas, different equations that he was working with. So for yourself, what's the infinity with Einstein?
Honestly, I don't know a lot about Einstein. I don't read a lot of books. I've read 2 Gary Vee books in the past decade.
Okay.
So out of high school, I didn't really read much other than comic books because I was super into that. So my affinity with Einstein is more of him as a character of what's in my head and what I know from like movies and things like that. I really like his look, the crazy hair and the mustache. Love it. And yeah, just him as a character. And just from what I know in the movies, he just accomplished, he thought of stuff and then proved it or tried to prove it. And that impressed me.
Yeah, he was, and that was funny because David actually talked about that yesterday on the live that we had done, and he's like, when I was in school, very analytic, I could see it and be like, this is what's missing, and then start putting that together that way. Yeah. So it's interesting because when you were talking about that, it's kind of that same situation of, hey, here's the problem. And when you look at entrepreneurs, the true entrepreneurs really are looking at the problem space, saying, okay, this is the spot, that the trouble spot in the consumption chain. They go back, create the solution, and bring the solution to the problem space. Yep. But a lot of people are like, here, let me create a solution before I've looked at the problem. Right. Here's the solution. I know it's going to work. And people are like, what are you talking about?
Nobody wants this. This isn't a thing. Go away. This is a great idea in 1998.
Yeah. Very, very funny. So, Adam, for yourself, when you're building and you're doing what you're doing now, is there anything that myself or individuals that I know can help you out? Anything that we can do to help you grow or reach or whatever it may be?
Well, right now, in the immediate future, no. I'm in the process of, because I started as Epic Moment Photography, and now I'm transferring everything over to Epic 365 because I don't want 2 EINs, I don't want 2 bank accounts, I just want 1. So I'm in the process of doing all the legal stuff, transferring all my documents over, my contracts, and establishing Epic 365. Once that's going, then I'm going to be looking to the networking groups for podcast spots if they want to rent the space, or Nowhere Project if they want to do a 10-minute interview on their job site if they have one. If they don't, we can come here. And we're launching a show called Good News News, and that's just user submitted good news, whether it's a birthday, you just bought a car, doesn't matter, whatever you think is good news, and we'll just kind of post that on the podcast as like a news show, like a video podcast.
Oh, okay.
My wife and Dave's wife and my wife are going to do that show. But yeah, that's it. I mean, just other than just awareness.
And that, I think when you're looking at that, as you're building it, that's something as you're going out into the networking space, just bring that up and let people know, hey, this is what I'm working on. It's still in a work in progress, but for individuals that are wanting to get into podcasting or wanting to create not viral content, but have this idea that they're a content creator, but maybe they don't want to spend a lot of money on the equipment because the equipment can get very expensive.
Equipment and the knowledge. Yeah, this I just bought. Luckily, I got a dope wife, so I was like, I'm going to buy podcast stuff. Never had done a podcast, don't know anything about audio. And she's like, okay, well, how much do you need? I'm like, $2,000. She's like, okay, yeah.
And when you, so the $2,000 that you had spent for the equipment, what was that all for? Just in case somebody has an idea and they're like, $2,000, what's that going to give me?
$2,000 gets you 4 mics, 4 arms, 4 XLR cables to extend past the arm, and the board. And that's pretty much it. I think that altogether was 16 minus tax. And then just some other equipment that I needed, little stuff. But $2,000 will get you what I would consider, because I look at podcasters, like not necessarily Joe Rogan. They all use the SMB7, which is a $300-$400 mic. I'm not quite there.
Is that the Shure mic? Because I know that's what Travis is real big. That's what he provides. Because the other thing, when you're in the pod decks and you've got the app, you're part of the community, so you can actually get into monthly giveaways. And so last month was a small recorder, so you don't have to take your computer with you.
Yeah.
And it's got the outlets, the ports and whatnot. And so the month before was the Rode. So it's unique, but I know Travis is real big on the Shure mics.
The Shure SMB7. Joe Rogan uses it, and anybody who's making a good deal of money on their podcast will use it. It's supposed to have the most natural. Sorry, I've been sick.
It's all good.
It's supposed to have the most natural voice and pop filters and all that stuff, but it's a $400 mic. And I was like, I need 4 mics. I don't think the wife's gonna go for that.
So the mic I utilize is the Blue Yeti, and so that's about 130.
Yep.
So, but it's one of those things that I'm like, well, this is what I like doing. So let me go ahead and get something that is very sturdy. But it's like any other piece of equipment. Over time, it's going to wear down. So it's like, okay, cool. So got to go here and do what we need to.
Yep. And these mics are dynamic, meaning they're generally not going to pick up the dog barking across the street and every noise that's in the house. So I know the Blue Yeti, I forget what it's called. Is it a cardioid, or I don't know what it's called, but it picks up any noise that's possible.
It's like a compressor or something like that. Because I'm in the house recording, and in the living room there's a freaking grandfather clock in there, and I can hear it. And I'm like,
you can hear it perfectly.
whatever. You're getting real life, so I'm not gonna hold back, because I'm not gonna be like, well, I don't have the perfect setup. Yeah. Screw that. It's like, just go do it, and then grow it. And then as you're growing, that's where you make those adjustments, you make the changes. Yeah. But I think that's what a lot of people too is they hold themselves back because it's like, it's not perfect. And I'm like, you've got something.
And I'm not like that. Like, I bought this first. The number one reason I was looking into it was COVID. So when everything, like, I meet my clients, we usually go to a coffee shop or a local spot, and we talk for half hour. Since COVID, it's been a lot of Zoom calls.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, I'm the photographer, videographer. If somebody calls me on Zoom and they got better equipment than me, I'm gonna feel bad. So I was like, okay, I need a mic, I need software, I need whatever I need to take great Zoom calls. But then in my head, it started getting bigger and bigger, and then it became this podcast studio. So,
but that was one thing that I did notice when you were talking with the COS networking when we were over the Zoom. Mm-hmm. That was the one thing I noticed was the setup that you had. And it's funny because when you start getting in this space, you're like, man, that's a nice mic. That's a nice setup. I probably wouldn't do that. But it's funny because when you start getting in this and you start noticing those small little things, I think somebody did make a comment. They're like, are you doing news or something?
You look like a DJ.
Yeah. It's but it's one of those things that it's just the appreciation, because when you're in it, you understand it's the appreciation for the small things. But it's also the big things. It's like, hey, great job on going out there and doing what you want to do. Great job on not holding back. I think a lot of people do that though too. It's like, I gotta have the perfect name and this and that, and you'll see people are like, how long should a podcast be for a perfect podcast? It's like, there's some people that go for 4 hours and people will listen to it, and then you'll have some that are 3 minutes long. So it just all varies.
Yeah. Well, and you can't search stuff like that because it's an opinion, so you'll get everything.
It's true.
Like if you search, because I've searched that, like how long should a podcast be? One article says 10 minutes, one says 5, one says 15, one says an hour. Comedians, they aim for an hour. I guess it's based on, they base it on like sponsorships. So comedians are big, if they have an audience, they want to do an hour so that sponsors pay X amount.
Nope.
Sponsors kind of dictate how long theirs should be.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing a podcast to get out there, do whatever you want.
And that's the thing I tell when you research it too, a lot as you're growing a podcast. This is one of those environments that the numbers and all that, there's really not much out there that you can show somebody. You can say, hey, this is how long I've been doing it and whatnot. So you could potentially show an exposure to a business and say, hey, I understand that you don't understand this and maybe you're scared to do it, but why not allow me to help you get your name out there?
Yeah.
And because that's the thing that you can think about too, is when you're doing the coming together with the different medias, the different podcasts, that's a great way to really give great sponsorship to somebody, because they're getting blasted over 8-9 different platforms. So like for us, we do sponsorship for people, but we're doing 5 podcasts, we're doing lives all the time, and so it's like you're getting exposure. And so for somebody to have something that stick, they've got to see it 70 times. And so with a lot of the software, the different platforms, you can plaster somebody's logo in there, and if you're going for 30 minutes and that's what they see for 30 minutes, it's there. And so I laugh because as I'm watching TV, seeing like real estate agents buying a spot on TV to do the commercial, and I'm like, you probably could get a better deal and go podcasting, especially because if you get somebody that's doing both live and then stripping it down and putting the audio on the platform, you're getting hit on both ends, the visual piece, and then if they do the commercial or whatnot, and even doing the live, they can give a shout out, read off your commercial, and then that's in the audio. So it's both visual and the audio side. So I like take advantage of it.
TV, I'm with Gary Vee. TV is done. Like until it becomes super cheap, there's no reason to be on TV. You can create your own channel on YouTube. You can be on podcast. You can get anywhere else other than TV. Radio is kind of, I guess, making a comeback, but it's still expensive.
Well, when you're going up against potentially like Sirius XM, that gives you such a large range of different options and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's unique. And I laugh because like when we do our sponsorship, we tell people there's no guarantee, because we're not going to get held accountable and saying, oh yeah, you get a 20% return on this. No, because we don't know. You can't dictate people, but if you can give them a platform that they're getting listened to and heard on multiple different times, that's going to be better use of their money because of how much is being dropped.
Yep.
And so it's one of those interesting things that you could potentially serve another business and be able to take care of yourself by serving them and their needs and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. Advertising anymore, like counting clicks or counting all that stuff, isn't really working. It's kind of advertising, I feel, has evolved into, you have to kind of, based on either your growth in your business or based on how you feel about being a sponsor on this or that, that's what you measure it by. You can't measure it by numbers anymore. For the most part. I mean, there's some analytics you can do, but for the most part, it's if you believe in that, then be a sponsor on their show. If you don't, then don't.
Yep.
They'll get you some new eyes for sure, no matter who it is. So yeah, we're developing a whole sponsorship side. And it's individual for like the TV shows, and I call them TV shows, YouTube shows, or whatever you want to call them. I'm doing a little different for Nowhere Project because it's more about local business. If you're a sponsor, the 3 ad reads or whatever in the beginning, if you pay for one of those spaces, it costs a lot, but you're getting not only the ad space, but you're getting once a month me for 3 or 4 hours to go record your own content. your own videos, your own promos, your own commercials, whether it's for the ad space or for whatever you need at the moment. So it's basically more of a content creation subscription than it is a sponsorship, but it's also a sponsorship.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing because as content creators, there's multiple different ways that you can do some different things that a lot of people aren't taking advantage of, or they're limited. Because I have to laugh because like financial advisors, oh man, they're so hamstrung that it's tough. Because I tell people, I'm like, you need to showcase and show yourself. But then the regulations and all of that can really hamstring what they can do. And the only reason I really get into that is I did that for a year. I didn't produce enough, so they cut my contract. But it's one of the things that I look and I'm like, man, they're so hamstrung on what they can do. And they'll get content that they can post out, but it's not human. It's like, hey, this is what we're posting and this is what you can post and share. But it's like, show some personality, show some life, do something.
Yeah. See, I think that's where the small businesses and entrepreneurs have a leg up on big companies, because we can decide in a day, I want a podcast studio, build it, and then you have a podcast and you push it out. Big businesses can't. They got to go through 12 people to figure out what to do, and then 12 more people to figure out how to do it, and then 12 more people to review what they did. So it's like, okay, you're a year away from doing anything.
And then those 36 people that it all had to go through, like, you're going to have 34 different opinions, and it should be done this way. And so by the time you get back your idea, you're like, this isn't even my idea. Like,
it's totally different.
It's like the telephone game where you start something, and then by the time it gets to the last person, it was a long sentence, and then they're like, dog. You're like, what?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, since running my own businesses and officially quitting, which was at 38, so 6 years ago now, I have lived in a world without rules. I could do what I want, when I want. When I first started, when I launched Epoch Moment, I ran ads on Facebook and figured out how to cuss on ads and have them be okay with it. And I ran ads that said, all of the wedding day coverage with none of the bullshit. And there was a picture of a cow. And I just put it out, and I got weddings up. It was something new. Like, I don't follow the industry. I don't follow anybody. I've never had a mentor for one wedding. I've never looked up to a photographer. I do whatever I feel like and just go do it.
Well, and I think you look at it too, because you may have somebody that you come across and they really admire what you're doing, and so you could potentially become a mentor.
No, I have had people, dude. I had somebody reach out 3 weeks after I started. And this is, I worked out, I don't know how, kind of serendipity how I got into photography. I never owned a camera other than flip phones, and I had the Razor. That was the best camera at the time. So I never owned a camera. I was into Photoshop, had done Photoshop forever. So I knew kind of the back end of editing. Never owned a camera, bought a camera for my birthday, 2 weeks later quit. 6 months after that, I was a photographer, starting my own business. 3 weeks after launching my business, I had 3 people contact me like, hey, I want to work with you for free and I need you to teach me how to. I'm like,
that's funny.
I'm still figuring it out. I go, I'll show you what I know, but
couple steps ahead of somebody. That's all it is. So, and that's the thing, you understand what you're doing. So that's the best thing, is basing yourself, your worth, and know what it is, and going out there and valuing based on what you can do.
And taking action on it. Most people ponder too much or pontificate too much. Never take action. I think a lot and I process a lot, but at the same time I'm moving forward. And sometimes I'm moving forward faster than the thought process.
Hey, it's all good.
And then I gotta sit down and be like, hold on, wait, I gotta let me circle back. Let me do something different.
And I think that's also puts you in a better advantage than some people, because you'll get people that overthink. They're like, it's got to be 95% all here, and it's like, if you have 75% of what it is, run with that, pivot as you need to go, and then you're going to be so much further along than somebody that's like, oh, I've got it 95% now, but they're like 10 steps behind you.
Yeah, exactly. They're still planning. You can plan forever because everything changes weekly, and that's one thing the internet has brought, is everything changes very fast.
Well, 2020 also showed us that with the pandemic and all that stuff, so it's one of those things that we've been shown that you can have the most well thought out plan, and that's probably going to go to the wayside. So
Yeah, 2020 was a weird year. So like I said, I don't really have a format for this. So usually like the Nowhere Project, I don't know if you saw it. Did you watch Matthew Beer?
I watched a little bit of it. Yeah.
Right at the beginning, he's like pointing to the camera. That's how we start them all. But if you want to, I'll put this together as a video. If you want to share your information, contact information.
So if anybody's looking to contact, get in touch. It's Facebook, Scott, and then last name is Brandt, Brandt. Scott is with 2 T's. I've heard some people, is it 1 T or 2? I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah, I know that. So, but then Instagram under SNBrandt26, and then we have both the Two Native Sons Facebook page and the IG page. I also have YouTube for Two Native Sons. And I tell people, I'm like, if you're looking at creating a YouTube channel, to get that to grow, it legitimately is a community. You can't do this yourself. You can go try to create 10,000 different emails, but good luck with that. So legitimately, when I tell people, I'm like, YouTube is a legitimate community building platform, because to grow and get out there, it takes a community to help grow that. Yep. But then with Twitch, it's under Two Native Sons, but a lot of times it's Facebook, probably the easiest way to get a hold. But then we also have IG, which is funny. I learned some stuff about IG. So IG is all about hashtags, and Facebook's more of like both IG and Facebook's all that real engagement, the meaningful stuff. But then Facebook, they really focus on like groups and whatnot. Yep. But then IG's all hashtag game out and whatnot. So it's unique how, and I brought this up, but then they're like, yeah, Facebook updated that, because a while it was Instagram could feed over to Facebook, but Facebook wouldn't feed over to Instagram, even though Facebook owns Instagram. Yeah. And then they're like, no, that's been fixed about a month ago with the whole business now. I was like, well, that's awesome. But I was like, why? Whatever. But yeah. So Facebook or Instagram is probably the best way, and then just go about it that way.
Nice. Yeah, social media is a whole different beast. It's interesting.
It's good times.
All right, man. That's all I have, unless you wanted to add anything else.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for letting me on.
Yeah. Awesome.